We do, of course, begin with the search for the mother of our colleague and friend, Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. The Pima County Sheriff saying today that DNA from gloves found roughly 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home produced no matches in what's called the CODIS database of the FBI. It comes as the search for Nancy Guthrie enters its 17th day. The sheriff issued a strong statement Monday as well, saying none of the Guthrie family members, including siblings and spouses, are suspects. In the statement, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said, quote, "The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are the victims in this case," adding that to suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is with us once again in Tucson, Arizona. Kelly, what more are we learning about that latest news about the DNA found on a glove a couple of miles from Nancy's house?
Well, the snapshot we are getting from investigators is that there's a lot of evidence that they've been dealing with, and a glove and other gloves have been talked about a lot publicly, and they have taken testing of those. They have established DNA profile, and then they've compared it against that database that you referred to, which includes persons all across the country who've been arrested or charged or convicted with a crime. There are differing laws state by state about when someone who's taken into custody must provide their DNA. But it is a vast database, and certainly if there were a criminal history, that would be a good way to identify a potential depositor of that DNA. Then, is it in some way linked to the Guthrie case? That's another big question. So work is being done. There are hundreds of investigators who are on this case, working on a stream of different types of approaches. We know, for example, that they have been canvassing gun stores in the area. Why? Because the suspect seen on that doorbell video had a weapon, had a holster that had some interesting identifying markers that authorities are trying to get a better read on. Where was it purchased? What could they learn about that? And doing that kind of legwork that can at times provide real breakthroughs. At this point, there is ongoing work, no big development, but we are told there is DNA material that is not tied to Nancy Guthrie or immediate family members, known persons at the home somewhere. They've not identified where. And that's part of the testing that they're doing as well. Could it be the abductor, or could it be some other person who may have visited the home? Those are the questions they're pursuing. It is an excruciating wait for the family and the community, but the work is going on, and the various investigators we've been in touch with talk about a sense of strong morale among those who are working the case, and the sheriff has talked about a belief that it is solvable. Kate?
Kelly O'Donnell with the latest from the ground in Tucson. Kelly, thank you so much. Let's bring in former FBI special agent and hostage negotiator Chip Massey. Also with us is genetic genealogist and DNA expert Cece Moore. Welcome to both of you again. Thanks for being with us. Chip, I'll start with you. First of all, how unusual is it for the sheriff to come out last night and say the family are not suspects? Does that typically happen where you eliminate people as suspects?
Oh, absolutely, it does. And I think it's important in this case, Kate, because there's so much focus on the family. There's so many people out there. We hear it from the public. You know, they're picking people. They've got their favorites.
Yeah.
That's what's so important here, is that now that they're off the board. Now America can focus again on what are the facts of this case? What is actually going on? You know, we've got over 30,000 tips in. 30,000, that line. It's remarkable. And what's so great is that this case likely isn't going to be solved by somebody that carries a badge. It's going to be somebody that has a cell phone and a hunch.
Yeah. Thank you. Cece, let me bring you in. How big of a setback is it that the DNA recovered on those gloves that Kelly was just talking about 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's house? They're telling us, the sheriff is saying, they did not yield matches in the FBI's, what they call CODIS database. Is that a setback? Where do things go next?
Well, it certainly is, just because this is a race against time. So if they had gotten that hit, that would have given them a lead they could follow up on immediately. Instead, now they're going to need to turn to investigative genetic genealogy to identify that DNA contributor. And that could take quite a bit of time, depending on the population group that DNA contributor comes from.
And you know so much about this, Cece. This is your line of work, genetic genealogy. Can you explain a little bit more for our audience who maybe doesn't understand what happens if it gets to that point?
Right. So in the CODIS database, they're looking for an exact match for that individual or a very close family member. With investigative genetic genealogy, we expand that to identify distant relatives. And so we're looking for people who share they're partial matches instead of full matches. So they might share only 1% of their DNA with that unknown individual, but it's a whole network of matches. We're not looking for just one person to help us tell who this individual is. We are working with often a dozen matches, 2-3 dozen matches of second, third, fourth, fifth cousins and beyond. If we get really lucky, we might find a close relative, but that's unusual because we're working with less than 2 million profiles to compare against.
Yeah.
So we're building those family trees, looking for patterns, overlaps, common ancestors ultimately is what we're looking for, because the only reason two people will share a significant amount of DNA, and again, significant to us can be very little, is if they have common ancestors in their family tree. And so if we can identify those common ancestors, we can start piecing together the family tree, ancestor by ancestor, and then reverse engineer the identity of that DNA contributor from that, just from their DNA alone.
Cece, thank you. Chip, sorry, let me turn back to you. There's been a lot of focus on the DNA, right? We've all been talking about it for days now on that evidence. You say, though, that we should also be paying attention to the window of time that the potential abductor spent inside the house.
Yeah. 41 minutes is unaccounted for. I mean, as far as we know, Kate. So think about that from a standpoint of the guy that we saw at that stoop that's running right now. He looks non-professional. He looks unsure, indecisive. That man is inside that house for 41 minutes. What if he made a mistake? What if he dropped something? What if he took off his glove and touched something in that house, and we do have those prints? What if he left something behind?
Yeah.
41 minutes unaccounted for, and if I was the captor, that would be on my mind.
Cece, which parts of the residence are you hoping that investigators were able to collect DNA from? Where would it be most helpful?
Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that they confirmed there was unidentified DNA in that home. I find that much more compelling than the glove that was found 2 miles away. And so I'm hoping that all of that time that was spent in there meant that it would be impossible for this individual not to leave their DNA behind. One thing in particular I thought was interesting was when he was outside the residence, it looked like he may have had a flashlight in his mouth. So when he leaned over to get those flowers and also to try to disable the camera, it's very possible that some saliva landed on the ground below. And so hopefully crime scene investigators were able to collect something like that, because that's a fantastic source of DNA. Also, let me add, it looks like there may have been an altercation based on the fact that Nancy's DNA was or blood was found outside, right? And so that could also have produced DNA that they're able to analyze from that individual.
Cece Moore, Chip Massey, great to have you both with us. Thank you so much for all of your information.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.